Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today I'm going to be ranking the 7 greatest against all odds stories in the NHL today. Now the NHL has never been more diverse, whereas so many players are coming from completely different countries and totally different backgrounds. But while some players had it easier than others, some players defied all expectations to get where they are today. So which players make today's video and what are their stories? Watch till the end for all the info and my picks, and of course subscribe if you're new. But starting us out in today's video with my first player that defied all expectations to make the NHL, starting us out at number 1, I have David Pastrnak. Now, I'm a big fan of Pastrnak, one of my favorite players in the league and one of the best players in the league. But it was a very good likelihood that he would never even get to the level he would be. He grew up in the Czech Republic with 2 loving parents, but he wasn't exactly the richest guy in the whole world. The reason why he has such little stick tape on his stick is because he was trained to save as much money as possible and use as less tape as possible too. That was the kind of situation he was in. Now his dad, Milan, was in charge of the 16 and 18-year-olds in his hometown at his hockey rink, so David would be around him for pretty much his entire childhood, being around the ice rink and spending time with his dad and mom. Now, David Pastrnak wasn't the richest kid on the block, but he still had a pretty great childhood, again, being around the rink and being around his family his whole life. But unfortunately, 4 days before he turned 17 years old, Pastrnak would get the call from his mom while he was playing hockey in Sweden that his dad had lost the battle to cancer and died on May 21st, 2013. Now, this would be just over a year before he was drafted in the first round by Boston in 2014, but David Pastrnak would go on to avenge his father and say that he had the motivation to get to the NHL level because of him. And Pastrnak, who already had all the things he learned from Milan Pastrnak, his dad, and the amazing support that he still had with his mom, he was able to have a pretty successful career throughout the minors and in the AHL Providence, and of course going up to the Boston Bruins and absolutely dominating. Again, using that motivation and the amazing skill that he already had. But Pastrnak grew up in a family that wasn't that rich, didn't have the greatest circumstances, and he lost his dad at age 16. That is a serious thing for any player to go through, but Pastrnak survived that, got through it, and thrived in the same era. He's a guy that has gone from nothing all the way to the top at the NHL ranks. But now coming at my number 2 spot, my second player who has defied all odds to make the NHL, I have Max Domi. Now, usually when you're a son player of a pretty great NHL player, it's a little bit easier to make the NHL level because you already have that brand recognition. But with Max Domi, it was a lot more of a complicated route. Now, Ty Domi, of course, being the player with the Toronto Maple Leafs and multiple other teams as well, Max Domi, when he was a child, was around those locker rooms 24/7. That was the easy part. But being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes made it a lot more of a complicated issue with him. Right now, he has to follow a strict diet and exercise regimen, but he had the inspiration of guys like Bobby Clarke who suffered the same thing, and he was inspired by them to make the NHL, which right now so far has been a pretty good career. Now, Max Domi right now is a clear example of how you can still be successful and still be productive, even at a highest level of the NHL, with things like diabetes holding you back. It hasn't held Max Domi back so far. He's written a book, he's written articles, and right now is inspiration to kids who have the same thing as well. For a player, though, like Max Domi, who's still in his mid-20s, he has a lot to play for still, a lot of NHL games to play too, but right now is an inspiration, and for Canadian players as well, has been one of the best success stories out of the OHL and the NHL too. But going on to my third player that exceeded all expectations to make the NHL and be successful, at number 3, I have Jack Johnson. Now, Jack Johnson was neither poor nor rich, kind of in the middle, but as his hockey talents became a lot more obvious, his parents got a lot more involved. Now, Jack Johnson would play with the U.S. development program, later in the NCAA at the University of Michigan, but as his NHL career progressed, again, his mom specifically was a little bit too much meddling. Now, Jack Johnson ended up having a decision that he would regret for a long time. He gave his mom power over all of his finances, and afterwards, he ended up filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, had a protection, and then sued for $1.5 million. against his own parents. He would have to eventually reach a settlement that he would give $240K of his salary for the next 2 years, and then briefly after that, he was the lowest paid player in the entire NHL. Now, I personally am not the biggest fan of Jack Johnson. I don't think he's that great whatsoever, but I don't think he deserved that at all. Thankfully, now it's a lot better, and Jack Johnson is now getting paid, as he rightfully should, and his parents are backed off for now. But it was a story that had so many layers, so many confusing parts that I didn't even touch in this segment. But for a guy like Jack Johnson, again, the hockey part was never the issue, but he had so much complications in that department. Now he's getting paid though, he is getting the NHL salary, and right now he's getting that extra Pittsburgh Penguins money, which right now is paying him pretty well. But now coming in at number 4, my fourth player that defied all expectations to make the NHL, I have Alex DeBrincat of the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks? For the Chicago Blackhawks. Okay, now we're good. Now, for DeBrincat, one of the main gripes against him was that he was too small in his draft year in the OHL. He was scoring a bajillion points, a bajillion goals, but no, he was too small, so that equals terrible player, unfortunately. Now, Chicago would later be one of the only smart teams in that draft, getting him in the second round and getting him 39th overall, which would later on be one of the biggest steals we've seen in the last few years. But DeBrincat, again, the too small went against him throughout his whole draft year. He was scoring a bajillion points, a bajillion goals, but it didn't matter because he was too small to make it to the NHL. Obviously, we've seen how that's changed a little bit, and I think the NHL has changed simply because of Alex DeBrincat. I think he's shown a lot of GMs what he can prove. We've seen now Cole Caulfield get a lot of praise, Jack Hughes and all these guys who are a little bit smaller as well, but Alex DeBrincat started that trend and had all of it against him too. There were so many teams that passed up on him in that first round alone that said he was too small to make it. And right now, even though I don't like the Blackhawks whatsoever, I will say they were 100% right. Now, Alex DeBrincat is one of the stories, like in this video, that shows how you can still make the NHL and still be amazing, even though you might have some shortcomings. That was not intended. I'm sorry, Alex, if I offended you there. Shortcomings, oh my goodness. Anyways, when it comes to DeBrincat, he has proved that for players that aren't like 6'4", that you can still make a great career in the NHL, and DeBrincat has done that. Even though he's having a little bit of a down year, at this point, DeBrincat is still one of the brightest looking players in the entire NHL, and one of the best American players in the NHL. Oh, and yeah, he's small, so don't forget that. Now we gotta leave him go in the second round. We can't have him in the we can't draft of under 6-foot player in the first round. That's just impossible. Yes, he might score 40 goals on us in 2019, but no, we can't have him with the first round pick. That would be impossible. And now heading on to number 5, the fifth against all odds story in the NHL. And this is one of the more crazy ones. I don't even know how it happened, but at number 5, I have Carl Soderberg. Now, Carl Soderberg is one of the more, on just face value, fine players in the NHL. He is a pretty good one, I would say. But he has an interesting fact that I didn't even know about him. Now, Soderberg was drafted in the second round by the Blues in 2004. He wouldn't make his NHL debut until 2013 with the Boston Bruins, and he would have a long road. But back in 2007, when he was playing in Sweden in the SHL, he ended up losing eyesight in one of his eyes. He has played in the NHL for a long time with one working eye. I can barely skate with 2 eyes, and yet he does this. And I think it could have been very easy for him to just say, okay, I lost eyesight in one of my eyes due to hockey. I'm just going to pack up the bags, become an accountant somewhere, and live my life. I mean, it could have been very easy for him. I'm just saying. But in that instance, he said it made him stronger. Even though he only has eyesight in one eye, can only play hockey with one eye, he says that he is one of the best hearers in the NHL, and he uses his ears to sense everything about the game, which is pretty much what he has to do at this point because he only has one eye to work with. It's just one of those stories that is just weird to think about almost. Again, in that instance in 2007, he got a stick up to his eye. He lost his complete eyesight, yet he still overcame the odds and became one of the most solid players for Colorado and now for the Arizona Coyotes. But now going into my number 6 pick, two players I'll keep in the same category here, two brothers as well. Going at number 6, I have the Stewart brothers in Kris and Anthony Stewart. Now, the both of them have not had like superstar careers, but Kris Stewart recently this year played with the Flyers, and Anthony played a few years ago as well in the NHL. But they both have some of the most interesting stories as well. Growing up in Scarborough, Ontario, in a very poor family, they both used to live in a motel with their 5 other sisters and their family, basically living off of ketchup and toast for their entire childhood. And for a family that at times could barely pay rent, you wouldn't think that they'd go into hockey, but they did. Their father ended up instilling the love of hockey into them at a young age, and they wanted to play hockey and wanted to make the NHL. They both were very good at it as well, and their mom basically had to bribe the coaches to make sure that they could actually afford the pay and actually rent to go for the whole year. It was that bad of a situation, but Anthony and Kris both played hockey. Now, at one point, Anthony was the top dog. He was the main prospect, and Kris was kind of left behind. Then Kris started to pick it back up again after playing a year of college, or not college, high school football, and ended up getting the love of hockey once again, and ended up getting drafted in the first round by the Colorado Avalanche. The rest is history, both players making the NHL and having pretty solid careers. But now heading into number 7, my 7th player who has defied all odds to make the NHL and to be successful. And this might be one of the more sad stories in today's video, but I felt it was worth sharing. That being the story of Bobby Ryan / Bobby Stevenson. Now, this is one that has a lot of layers, so it'll take a little bit to explain this. But Bobby Ryan / Bobby Stevenson grew up in New Jersey as an NJ kid in a pretty wacky and crazy family. His dad ended up being charged with attempted murder at one point for not doing some great things to his wife as well. But Bob's family, Bobby Ryan's family, Bob was the dad, Bobby Ryan was the son. Bob's family ended up accepting him once again. They ended up moving to Southern California so that Bobby Ryan / Bobby Stevenson, which was the name at the time, could end up playing youth hockey. And at that point, after his mom and dad separated and after everything changed and he would later on go to be a highly touted NHL prospect, Bobby Ryan had the name of Bobby Stevenson, but ended up going with Bobby Ryan as his main name, and of course the rest throughout the NHL is history. Now, Bobby Ryan's dad and Bob ended up getting also arrested again for illegal gambling, stating that the gambling was to support his family. And obviously with Bobby Ryan, it's not bad at this point now. He's getting paid $7 million. He's had a fantastic NHL career, has a wife, has a great family as well. So he is doing pretty well at this point, but his childhood was not good whatsoever. Even though his family had a decent amount of money, they could still pay for the hockey. The whole thing wasn't there. His dad wasn't the greatest person either, and it just created a whole atmosphere that was almost toxic at the time for Bobby Ryan, who ended up growing up as Bobby Stevenson, again changing his name to Bobby Ryan. Again, I didn't even know that he had the name of Bobby Stevenson until I made the research for this video, but it just shows how complicated it can be at times. Even with all that distraction and all that craziness as a child, Bobby Stevenson / Bobby Ryan was able to produce a great NHL career, and at times being one of the NHL's best players. But honestly, for route 1 to 7, if it teaches us anything, it's that there are so many different ways that you can make the NHL. Whether you're like a Max Domi, you have type 1 diabetes, whether you don't even have eyesight in one of your eyes, it doesn't matter, because whether you have the determination, the skill, the work ethic, you can still make the NHL if you so choose. And of course, there's obviously the skill that goes into it. In my opinion though, there are so many fantastic stories that I didn't even cover in this video. So if you guys want a part 2, let me know down those comments down below. But that is a perfect segue to this. If you guys did enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Comment down below your thoughts on these 7 players mentioned here, what you think of their stories, and also maybe some players that I missed as well, and some players that you thought come from against all odds to make the NHL. Share this video with your friends, get the info, and get these amazing stories out there, these against all odds players as well. My name is Nathan, and I'll see y'all next video or stream. Goodbye.